All right, we're going to be talking about angle pairs formed by transversals, specifically on parallel lines today. All right, so a transversal is going to be that line that cuts two lines, or cuts through two lines. Okay, it has to be intersecting two or more lines. So the definition is down here for you. Okay, has to be intersecting two or more lines. So if we look, there are clearly differences between the two. The parallel lines here, it looks nice and pretty, nice and crisp. A lot of the angles look like they're probably going to be the same value. But if we look over on the right, this is what it looks like if their lines are not parallel. Okay, we're going to be specifically looking at when things are parallel. Now, vertical angles we have already talked about, but we're going to talk a lot more about them throughout this class. Okay, they're going to be angles that are across from each other. So it's a pair of angles with a common vertex whose sides are formed from intersecting lines. So vertical angles are always going to be congruent. And if we need to remember, the congruent symbol is going to be a little squiggle with two lines underneath, or the equal sign underneath. So we're going to list some vertical angles from the pictures above. So if we're looking above, right, vertical angles are across from each other. So 1 and 4 there are across from each other. So we would list angle 1 being congruent to angle 4. Okay, we could also say that 2 and 3 are across from each other. So angle 2 is going to be congruent to angle 3. And then on the bottom, we've got angle 5 being congruent to angle 8. And lastly, angle 6 and angle 7 are congruent there by vertical angles. Again, they're the ones across from each other. Sometimes you can kind of make a bow tie if you really look at them. Right, there's a bow tie there. They kind of make that bow tie shape. So the next one is a linear pair, which is something we've also talked about. Remember, a linear pair has to be both supplementary and adjacent, and we would solve these by adding them up to 180, just like we did with our regular angle pair relationships. Okay? These are always going to add up to be 180. Okay, they add to be 180. Sorry, my board is acting up. So if we want to list some linear pairs, I'm not going to list all of them. I'm just going to list a few, right? So we've got a straight line here. Okay, so the linear pair I could say is 1 and 2, right? So angle 1 plus angle 2 is going to equal 180. Okay, so that's one of them, one of the many. We could also draw our transversal line in there, and like we could say angle 1 and angle 3 were a linear pair. Okay, there's also the ones on the bottom. There's a whole bunch, but I'm not going to list them all in this video. Okay, there are a bunch of them on there. The next one, which is a new one and is the most forgotten. So I want you to highlight, star, underline, do whatever you have to do to remember corresponding angles. Again, this is one of the most forgotten angle pair relationships. Okay, so corresponding angles are going to be angles that are on the same position on both lines, but they're on a different line. Okay, so they're always going to be congruent. So if we're looking at the picture above, right, I like to think about drawing a little box along my picture. Okay, and we have our top left box. Okay, we have a top left corner, a bottom left corner, a top right corner, and a bottom right corner. And the same thing in the bottom box. Okay, so angle 1 and angle 5 are corresponding angles because they're in the same box, just on a different line, right? Angle 6 and angle 2 are going to be corresponding angles. 7 and 3, 4 and 8. So let me just list, I'm going to list 2 down here at the bottom. Let's do angle 2 and angle 6. So angle 2 is going to be congruent to angle 6. And let's do 3 and 7. So 3 is going to be congruent to angle 7. Again, this is because they're in the same box. So if I draw the box on the picture, right, they're both in the bottom left-hand box of the picture. Now, these would only be congruent if the lines are parallel, right? If we look over here, angle 3 and angle 7 are not congruent because the lines are not parallel. So it's only going to be congruent if the lines are parallel. It doesn't mean they're not corresponding angles. It just means that the lines are not parallel. They're not equal. Okay, so some key terms that are going to help us with our major terms that we're learning today is the word interior, right? To be interior means to be inside. It's like being inside of your house or inside of a building. So they're going to be the angles that are in between our two parallel lines. Okay, they're going to be in between the two lines. So if you can see up here, I have on my picture 3, 4, 5, and 6. Those angles are on the inside of the shape, right? They are between the two parallel lines. Then we've got exterior, right? And exterior of your house is the outside of your house. So they're going to be the lines that are the angles that are outside of your two parallel lines. So 3, 4, 5, and 6 were on the inside. 1, 2, 7, and 8 are on the outsides of the line. Okay, another word that's going to be helpful to us is alternate. Okay, alternate is going to be one of our types of angles, right? Alternate means to be opposite and diagonal. Okay, so we're going diagonal and then we're staying opposite as well. So 4, 5 are opposites, right? And diagonal. 1 and 8 are opposites. 2 and 7, 3 and 6. Okay. Then we've got consecutive, which means to be on the same side as one. On the same side of the transversal is the key there. It's going to be on the same side of the transversal. So 1, 3, 5, and 7 are all on the same side. 2, 4, 6, and 8 are on the same side of the transversal. Okay, so consecutive means to be on the same side of the transversal. So in class, we're actually going to do a demonstration using some candy. But since this is a video, I'm just going to go through what we would be doing in class without the candy. So alternate interior angles. Okay, alternate interior angles, we're using both the word alternate and interior. So they're going to be angles that are on opposite sides and on the inside of our picture. So if we look here, we've got 2 red dots. Those are a pair of alternate interior angles. The other pair are here in yellow. Okay, so alternate interior angles means to be on the inside and on opposite sides of the transversal line. Okay, alternate exterior angles means alternate or opposite sides and diagonal, as well as on the outside this time. Okay, so they're opposite and diagonal, but on the outside of our diagram. Then we've got consecutive interior, right? Consecutive means same side of the transversal. Interior means on the inside. So here, they're the same side and on the inside. These angles are always going to be supplementary. Oh man. They're always going to be supplementary to each other. Supplementary. Okay, the word consecutive is what tells us they're going to be supplementary. Consecutive is supplementary. I'm going to go back a second. Alternate, okay, means congruent for us, okay? These angles are always going to be congruent to one another. Again, I really apologize for my video and it shooting word across the screen, but they're congruent, okay? Consecutive means supplementary. They're going to be 180 degrees. We're going to add them up to be 180 degrees. Consecutive exterior is going to be on the outside and on the same side. Okay, so got my red dots and my yellow dots up here. Okay, again, consecutive means supplementary. These angles are going to be supplementary to one another when the lines are parallel. Okay. So, one more skill that we're going to talk about is if you cannot remember your vocabulary words, because there are a lot in this unit, you will have a vocabulary test next week on the 10th and 11th, depending on if you have me on A day or B day. So we've got two parallel lines cut by a transversal, and the trick is if you put A's and B's on your picture, so A, B, you've got to alternate. No B can be next to another B. So this one's got to be an A. And then this one's got to be a B. A, B. Notice that I have no A's next to A's and I have no B's next to B's. Okay, so all of the A's are going to be congruent to each other, right? So the A's that are up here at the top, right, those are vertical angles, and vertical angles are always congruent. All the B's are going to be congruent to one another. And then if we take A and B, they're going to be supplementary, which just means that angle A plus angle B is going to equal 180 degrees. So if we look at this example, we can fill out the rest of it by knowing our A's and B's. So I'm going to label everything with my A's and B's. And everywhere I see an A, it's going to be 125. So I'm going to fill in 125 everywhere I see an A. Okay, now to get my B's, I'm going to take 180 and I'm going to subtract 125. So I get 55. And everywhere I see a B, I'm going to have a value of 55. Okay, so anywhere I see a value of B, I'm going to have a 55. So there I've got 53 in the top. I want you to go ahead and fill out your A's and your B's and see if you can figure out what all the other angles are going to be and check with what I have on mine. All right, so if you had filled it out with your A's and your B's, right, you would have gotten your angles to be all of the B's 53, all of the A's 127. And it goes along with our vocabulary, right? The B's there on the inside are alternate interior angles, and alternate interior angles are always congruent, okay? The A's on the outside are alternate exterior, so those are always congruent. A and B on the inside are consecutive interior angles, and they're always supplementary. So it goes right along with your vocabulary words, but the more you know your vocab, the easier all of this will be. Okay, but A's and B's is a really quick way to know what you're doing with the angles in order to solve. So if you have any more questions, feel free to see me in class. And I want you to finish that last example there on your own. Okay? Oh, actually, we did all of them, so you're good.